We're gonna do that at the break, so.
Oh, no, we like it that way.
I call this meeting of the Frederick County Board of Education to order, please. Like to welcome everybody to the final this morning. And at this time, I call this meeting of the Frederick County Board of Education to order, please.
Delayed reaction.
Like to welcome everybody to the final this morning. And at this time, I ask Dr. Miller if she would do the roll call for us, please.
Good morning and Merry Christmas, board members.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Francis Goodwin,
Here.
Ms. Sam Clark,
Present.
Mr. Victor Dove, Mr. Carl Almont,
I'm present.
Stephanie Key,
Here.
Hughes. On the way, Ms. Kimberly Smith.
Here.
At this time, thank you so much. I appreciate that. At this time, I'd like to know, are there any amendments to the board's agenda? If there are none, I'd like to get a motion to approve the agenda, the board work session agenda for December 14, 2021.
Madam Chair, I did hear there was I see closed session down at the bottom if needed, so we don't need to amend the agenda to note that we are having one.
And that we're moving
You
it.
do not need to amend the agenda.
Okay.
Okay? We good?
So move, accept the agenda.
It has been moved and second that we adopt the December 14, 2021 board work session agenda. Are you ready for the question?
Yes.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have, the agenda is adopted. And at this time, we would like to share the vision and mission statement for Frederick County School System. Our vision says that we envision a public education system that challenges all students as learners and prepares them to imagine and create a successful life, values educators and empowers them to inspire and spark innovation in every student, leads in education and community engagement, and invites all students, their families, and all members of the community to work together to support public education to the benefits of our students, our community, our nation, and our world. Our mission statement says, together with our families and community, Frederick County Schools would educate our learners to personal, professional, and civic success through challenges and personalized instruction. And at this time, I've asked Vice Chairman Kimberly Smith to review the ground rules, the bid process, and the safety procedure in the event of an emergency during this meeting.
Thank you, Chairman Boomer. Our meeting ground rules are posted. We use them across the system. Today, Ms. Lou Ann Mack can be our Vanna. They are right above her head, posted in our meeting. To post and approve the agenda, listen as an ally. One person speaks at a time. Respect each other, no sidebars. Everyone participates. Stay on task, don't stop on time, schedule appropriate breaks. Evaluate at the end of each meeting, and if everyone could turn off or at least to silent anything that beeps, rings, buzzes, or could otherwise interrupt our meeting today. I'd appreciate that so that we can be just present with each other in the work that we have to do today. The bin item process, I remind the board, if you have an off-task thought, just put it on a sticky, put it on a little gray border here, and we'll make sure that Chairman Boomer addresses it before the meeting is over. For our safety procedures, process for tornado, let's just take about 30 seconds and just have a quiet moment as we think about people in the Midwest before we go over these tornado drills and remind ourselves how important they are. Okay, in the event of a tornado, we're going to split the room right down the middle where Mr. Silvera is. If you're to my right, we're going to go out this door into the interior hallway. If you're to my left, we're going to go out that door where Ms. Wagner is into the interior hallway, get down, cover our heads, and wait for the all clear. If we were to have a fire, we'd split the room the same way, except exit the building to the parking lot to the right and to the left. If we were to have an intruder in the building, I'd ask people closest to the door to lock them and secure them. We would alert the people in the building that weren't already aware, call for help, and we would wait here for the all clear to be given. If the intruder's in the room, we're gonna still alert the building, call for help, and then we're gonna counter and do what we need to do to take care of each other and get out of here for Christmas. That is it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And at this time, we ask Board Attorney Brian Gatchett to offer the invocation for this meeting this morning.
Board members, if you please pray with me. Lord our God, we pause at the beginning of the day's business to acknowledge you, to glorify you, and to sing the praises of your name. For in this season of celebration and festivities, it is you who has spread a wondrous feast before us. For each and every person, you provide a banquet of graces. You fill us with the bounty of your goodness. Long ago, you formed a plan, a wonderful purpose, certain and sure, for our redemption from all that darkens our world and overwhelms our spirits. You desire our salvation from the shame of our suffering and the guilt of our hearts. When we seek shelter from the storm, you are our stronghold. When we need shade from the heat, you are our strength. When the words of the cruel are like a wintry blast, their insults like a scorching drought, you are our rescue. We wait upon you, O God, our Savior. Wipe away the tears from our faces, that we would be glad in your presence and rejoice in the hope we have in you. In the power of your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
At this time, we'd like for everyone to please stand. I would like to ask Board Member Naomi Clark, that she will lead us to our pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
At this time, we would like to recognize our parents and student representatives attending our December 14th Board of Education meeting this morning. From Sharon Woodard is the parent of a, where's Miss Woodard? Over here.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Should come up here.
You get to come on up.
Okay,
You have a name place.
thank you. She's a parent of a student at Reassignments Field Middle School. And we'd like to recognize Jordan Hawkins and Zola Mosley from Reassignments Fields Middle. And these are our student representatives for this. Where are they?
Right here.
Okay, they'll sit right there where they need to be. I'm just looking over here because I see some, this is over here, okay. But they're here for something else. We can understand.
And Jordan Hawkins.
And at this time, I would
Gracie
also like
Fields.
to recognize any elected official that's listening in or today, and we appreciate them being with us at this meeting. Our teacher of the year, she's always here. There she is, raise her hand, she's grinning, she's here. And our principal of the year, she's always here, and we just thank them for coming and leaving their, they got busy schedule at school. And so, but they're here to represent, and so we are so thankful for that. And at this time, we will begin with the business part of the meeting. Wait a minute, are we doing
The Carolina Panthers.
the Carolina Panthers? That's why they're here. Okay. So I'm going to turn this over to, who's doing this for us?
This way.
Ms. Whalen, okay, all right.
Good morning, board. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Stephen, would you go ahead and play?
On behalf of the National Football League and Dairy Farm Families of North Carolina, the Carolina Panthers and the Dairy Alliance are thrilled to announce Craven County Schools as the winner of this year's $10,000 Hometown Grant Award. Craven County is focused on better nutrition and encouraging all high school students to be more physically active. A sports nutrition lesson plan was developed and shared with students. Protein bento boxes with protein-rich yogurts and cheeses are available to all students at lunch and as a grab-and-go meal for athletes' game days. The Hometown Grant funds will be used to purchase refrigeration and transport equipment to offer healthy meals and small sports equipment like weights, balls, and cones to engage students in being active 60 minutes a day. On behalf of the National Football
Today, on behalf of the North Carolina Dairy Farmers and the National Football League, I am thrilled to announce the $10,000 hometown grant check to Craven County Public Schools. We appreciate everything they do for our students, and they continue to encourage healthy eating and physical activity throughout the school day and beyond the school day. So thank you very much for everybody attending. I appreciate all you all do, and I hope you enjoy your dairy throughout the day. I guess I can stand in front of you. There. All right. Okay, Jerry, ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Congratulations.
We don't have any samples?
Chocolate.
Next time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wagner, do we have any public input?
Yes, ma'am, you do.
Okay, at this time, we're going to do our public input. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Kimberly Smith.
Okay, do we have timekeeper? Okay, we're good. Our first speaker is Heather McManus.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I did not get a chance to speak at the last meeting. Unfortunately, I was right below the last person. So there was a couple things that I wanted to address about the last meeting. I know with our new math and as well as the ELA curriculums that we're using, I had mentioned to somebody at the last meeting about those companies possibly supplying us with some type of over the summer workbook for our students to use so they can continue to bridge the gap that we've experienced through the last couple of years. So I just wanted to mention that to you all and for everybody listening. And I also wanted to mention about possibly having food trucks here for the Board of Education meetings. I feel like it's important to get more people involved, and it's a good opportunity for members of the community to come, be involved. Plus, it feeds everybody that's here. Sometimes the meetings can run long, especially like you do the morning and then the evening. Full bellies are happy people, right? And then I also lastly wanted to address recently, actually over the last couple of weeks, one of my children was isolated because he became a direct contact of somebody that was COVID positive in that experience that we had. So, and I kind of knew, it was going to happen at this point. We hadn't had any exposures at all. So, it was almost 2 weeks ago, I got a call from the school notifying me that my child had been directly exposed to COVID. And one of the first questions I was asked was he vaccinated or not? And I was told that if he was not, he was going to have to miss his extracurricular meet that he was literally getting ready to go on and school. But if he had been vaccinated, his day would have been able to continue on as normal. So as I listened to the nurse telling me this, I could kind of feel myself starting to get tense, clenching my jaw. I'm like, oh my goodness, I knew this was coming. And I just immediately started thinking of my son. How was he going to handle this? And I knew that he was going to be devastated. So I took a few deep breaths and, I reminded myself that we as a family are doing everything we can to be as prepared as possible for this. And, that we're made for this. So, we practice all the things we can at home, good hygiene, hand washing as soon as they come home from school, all of them. It's something that I've always done. We do our best to diminish and kill any virus that might be in their mouths or throats by gargling with antiseptic mouthwash. I make sure they get a multivitamin every single day. I make sure that they are taking other vitamins and supplements that have been shown to help our bodies, our immune system, boost our immune system to be prepared for this. So I made my way to the school to check my child out. And I could tell by the look on his face that he was really upset. As we got in the car, he started to explain what he had just experienced. He was called to the office literally while waiting to board the activity bus. And he had no idea why he was being called to the office. He was just told he had to go. And then once at the office, he was told why he was there. And my son was also explaining to me that there was another person that was exposed with him. And as they were sitting there together, the other person started telling him about how he was getting angry at the person that had exposed them. And he was very upset. And my son explained to the other person that it was okay to feel how he wanted to feel, but try not to be angry with him because it wasn't his fault, and that he never would have done it on purpose. So that was a very, proud moment for me that he handled it that way. But then, and it really helped me over the next couple of weeks, over the last 2 weeks, knowing that he had that mindset. I will say that the mitigation measures that are being used to isolate with regards to the vaccination status, my children's doctor has not recommended that they receive that vaccine. And we know that, it does a great job. It's saved lives, no doubt, but it's not bulletproof. And it doesn't say that they're not going to get COVID or spread COVID. So I feel like it's not fair to have two sets of rules for somebody, who's following their doctor's orders, so to say. And then also I would like to say that if we could get like a one pager on what parents should do, how they should handle things,
Finish your statement.
Just, things to look for. I was very worried leaving him there alone. You never know, what they're going to start to feel like mentally. And knowing that he had to miss those kinds of things. I was, hopeful, but it's scary and you don't know what to look for unless you look it up, yourself and try to do that. So just a one pager on what parents should expect, things to look for, things to expect from the school, the teacher, what they expect from the student. I know there's some information out there, but man, it's a lot. There's a lot of, I'm still reading through the handbook and I'm not finding anything like specific. So that's all.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Our next speaker is Jennifer Dacey.
Good morning,
Good
board
morning.
members. Good morning, Superintendent Miller. I just want to follow up on what Heather was saying.
Many of you may know I don't have kids in the school system, but I have been receiving regular calls from parents who do have kids in the system. And the constant concern is about the quarantine of healthy asymptomatic kids. So we have, kids heading into break, they have exams, and all of a sudden they're getting a call, your child has to come home, come pick your child up. And, we have lots of parents in the school system who, I talked to one mom and, she has a cleaning business. She cleans homes for a living, and she needed to go pick up the child. And she said to me, well, where can I get her tested today? Well, she was able to I said, Goshen is still open until noon. Go and have her tested there. She gets to Goshen. They had decided to stop testing for the day. So, she's then burned up a lot of her work day trying to get her child in a position where she could go back to school and couldn't make that happen. So I think it's a really frustrating situation. I'm sure you're going to give an update on voluntary testing in the schools. I do know that parents have a lot of concerns about that because we don't know what is happening with the test samples once they are tested. We don't know, there are concerns about some of these companies and what is happening with the DNA that they're collecting in this process. So I think there are still a lot of parental concerns about that issue. One of the refrains that I have heard is that parents have a perception. Now, in Heather's case, obviously you heard the nurse asked about vaccination status. In some situations, I'm being told they are not asking about vaccination status. And yet the perception by parents and students is that children who are not vaccinated are being forced to quarantine. And the parents are left with the perception that nurses know who is vaccinated and who is not without asking a question. And I think that that raises a whole nother level of concern for them. What do these nurses know about my child that I don't, that I haven't told them? And so I think that is something that perhaps the health director could clarify, because I've done a lot of checking with other folks around the state. And I believe that unless you are a vaccine provider, you probably cannot access the state database of vaccinated persons. So I think it's probably the case that school nurses cannot. But I also know, and you all know, that because of this whole contact tracing issue, there are additional folks at the health department who are helping you with contact tracing. So I think it would be really helpful for parents to be assured that folks at the health department are not looking up their child's vaccination status and putting them on a list. People don't want to have their children's medical status be considered part of the decision-making process when it comes to their education. So I would just ask you to keep those things in mind. I know you have to vote on masking, and I'm not going to talk about that again. But I'd also ask you to consider, and I'll be happy to forward this to you, but there are counties in our state that are starting to look at how to go forward, given the parameters that you face in the Safe Schools Toolkit, and asking the state to go back and look at those issues that are addressed in the toolkit and how they really leave the board in a difficult position and quite hamstrung. But I think I would just remind you that, of course, under the North Carolina Constitution, our students have a constitutional right to an education. And particularly these kids who are asymptomatic, we need to keep them in school as much as possible, because they are suffering learning loss. And we have to worry about the mental health issues. As the chair of the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, we are seeing an increase in juvenile crime, particularly with our older youth at this point, who are back in school. Gratefully, last year we had really low numbers because they weren't in school to the same extent. So I just ask you to consider those issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our final speaker for this morning is Rob Jones.
Good morning, board. Good morning, educators. Father of four go to Griffin County Schools. Two of them graduated. One's going to the U.S. Naval Academy. The other one's going to ECU. Y'all get plenty of emails, y'all get plenty of negative press. Whether I agree with your decisions or not, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our public input.
Okay, we'd like to thank everybody for your public input this morning. And at this time, I need to get a motion to approve the board of meeting minutes for the following meeting dates. November 3rd, 2021, the special call meeting for redistricting. November 16th, 2021, board work session minutes, and November 18th, 2021, board meeting minutes. So I need to get a motion to approve those.
So moved.
It has been moved and second that we approve the board meeting minutes for those particular date that we just said, November 3rd, November 16th, and November 18th. Are you ready for your question? All those in favor of approving this, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes has it. These minutes are approved. I need to get a motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes for the following meeting dates, November 16th, 2021, and November 18th, 2021.
I so move.
It has been, I'm sorry, somebody second?
Second.
It has been moved and second that it,
I have a question. before you go.
okay. Ms. Smith,
And I'm asking Mr. Gatchell, so he's not surprised. We still have some outstanding closed session minutes. When will we be expecting those?
Hopefully soon.
Soon before I leave the board, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So each month I'm just gonna ask politely
And that is perfect.
when we'll have them. Okay, thank you.
any more questions?
No.
It has been moved and second that the minutes for the closed sessions for November 16th, 2021 and November 18th, 2021 be approved. Are you ready for your question? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. The minutes have been approved. Okay, we're ready for look like Dr. Policy first reading. This is Dr. Miller. They have you down. Is it? Can't get myself, hold on.
Dr. Boone's turn, I believe.
Okay.
Madam Chair, with your permission, can we do the personnel report first? I want to introduce someone to you, but I want to make sure that's taken care of first, if that's okay.
That's right. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good
morning.
Good morning.
Take off my, happy holidays to you.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Before you, you have Human Resources Report number 6. There's one correction item, which is next to the last page in item F. Number 2. That should be moved to item A1. We will make that correction immediately and send that back to Ms. Nelder. With those changes, if anyone does not have any questions, I would suggest that we move to approve Human Resources Report number 6 with that recommended change.
And this is the report that we were emailed earlier. Nothing's changed, correct?
Yes, it's just a move from one place to the next place, not a person's name or anything.
I need to get a motion to, if you have any questions.
Second.
Any discussion? I see some people still looking. Thank you much.
So wait, we have to prove.
We got to approve it. We have to approve it.
Sorry.
That's- No, you're fine. You did your part. We just looking. Okay. Good. It has been moved in a second that we approve the human resource report. Are you ready for the question? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Your report has been approved.
I always like to take the opportunity, particularly when we get someone that has chosen Craven County Schools as their new family. So I would like Mr. Darrell Ward to please stand up. Mr. Ward is a passionate educator for 9 years. He started as a substitute teacher, later became a teacher assistant, and then a CTE teacher in Pitt County Schools. He was the TA of the year in 2014, and later in 2021, he is the teacher of the year in Pitt County. Mr. Ward has served as an advisor, a mentor, department chair, and many more things during his tenure as an educator. When I asked Mr. Ward to kind of write up a summary, I want to make sure I read this because I think it will get him some points at home, that he's a father of 3 children and the husband of 1 lovely wife. He states that he's very excited to be a part of the Craven County School family, and he hopes to be here for years and years to come and have a successful career with us. And we hope the same. So I would like to recognize Mr. Darrell Ward as the new assistant principal at Vansboro Farm Life Elementary School. Welcome to the family. We wanted to do that first so he can get back to his school.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Congratulations.
Go spank my grandson real good, okay? I know he done something while you were gone.
All right, I'm back. Okay, today I will have 3 policies for first read from HR. The first one is policy 7100, which is recruitment of personnel pursuant to Craven County Schools Policy 2420, adoption of policies. There is one requirement that has been suggested. Thank you. As you can see, in the red, it's at the top. Okay. The reference that is a requirement by North Carolina School Board Association is in Part A, General Principles, and it is the statement about without regard to sex. Okay. The parentheticals indicate that they would like us to, require us to make sure that sex itself includes pregnancy, childbirth, sexual orientation, and gender identity. And then that is the only change in policy 7100, and to update the legal references associated with that. Next policy.
Wait, I just want to ask real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Clarification. I know it's first reading, but I just want to be clear. How can it be suggested and required?
Well,
Is it-
in the general principles, what they want you to do is to discuss without regard to sex.
Right.
The suggestion is to make, without that regard to sex, pregnancy, childbirth, sexual orientation, and gender identity. So you have to talk about without the regard to sex part, but the suggestion is to include sex as a recommendation of pregnancy, childbirth, sexual orientation, and gender identity. So
Right.
you have to address the sex part, but the recommendation is to use the specific terminology there.
That's what I wanted you to say, because I want the general public to understand that they are not, School Board Association doesn't require us to do anything
Yes, ma'am.
that is suggested.
So
Yeah.
do I need to say that again? Just to
No,
make sure?
you said it
Okay.
perfectly. I just wanted to make sure everybody else was understanding
Okay.
what you
Yes,
were
ma'am.
saying and how you were saying it.
All right. Next is policy 7130, which is pertaining to licensure. In part B2, scroll down a little bit more right there. The change that is required in according to cooperation with community colleges, is that we change adjunct instructors and core academic subjects to not only include just the core areas, but to also include fine, performing arts, and foreign languages. That part is required. We're also recommending that fine arts and performing arts and foreign language can go into grades K through 12. Because most of the policy focuses on high school, but for those specific areas, because General Assembly is having a hard time finding teachers to fill those areas, again, it is a suggestion for fine and performing arts, foreign language to be kindergarten K-12. In addition to that, temporary and adjunct instructors on the high school level are also allowed to teach core academic areas, fine and performing arts, and foreign language, or in an area of specialized knowledge or work experience from an individual. So basically what we have here is that for adjunct professors, they may do in high school fine arts, performing arts, and foreign language. You also may use those personnel in kindergarten through 12, but specifically for high school, they could add on a series of work experience. So they do not have to have the specific academic area, as long as they have a well thought out knowledge base, then they will be allowed to teach on the high school area, like HVAC, welding, things of that nature. Okay, next policy, any questions right now? Okay, policy 7270. This one has a couple of updates. Okay, right there in the beginning, this is the recommendation from the North Carolina School Board Association, and that is to add a temporary provision stated that the school system will adhere to all DHHS requirements to promote school safety during the COVID-19 pandemic. 2 in section C, I'll wait till we get there. Okay, thank you. That it is required that we add a statement to section C to address the general duty clause of Occupational Safety and Health Act of North Carolina. In section D6, we are required to delete any references to repeal policies and then update any cross references in regards to state matters. That, ladies and gentlemen, are the first 3 policies that I have for the first read for this month.
Any questions, anybody? Okay, so we get a thumbs up to, for the first reading. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Boone.
One more. I also have 3 policies in the second that you've already seen that I am requesting to move to consent. We've already covered those.
I make a motion, well, we won't move them to consent today. We'll need to take action on it because this is our meeting, right?
Yeah, that's why I said thumbs up, you approve, right?
Nope,
No,
that was the first reading.
Okay,
So
now,
we
okay.
actually need to so I'll make a motion that we approve these 3 policies as presented for second read.
Second.
It has been moved and second that we approve these 3 policies that have been presented for second reading. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, they have been approved.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Got a lot of policies on.
Yeah, we're on the strategic planning and potential improvement now.
Dr. Boone has finished everything.
She's done everything.
Okay, she's finished. All right, Ms. Liz.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to take a moment to let you, give you an update of where we are in our continuous improvement. We have been working on the superintendent's rubric. You know that is a tool that we use to evaluate the work of senior leaders here in our district. So while it's called a superintendent's rubric, it really is a tool that we use to compare ourselves and the work we're doing to those actions that are seen in highly advanced educational systems. So we had completed the rubric in October of this year. There's 7 areas. Can you scroll up just a little bit for me? There's 7 areas that we self-reflected on. And I gave you a list of where we as cabinet members felt we were at that time. And now our next steps are we're going to follow the same process that the Board of Education did when they had their retreat that Ms. Clark led you guys through. We're going to, in January, we'll be identifying priority indicators that we'll be focusing on our work to go forward. And then we're going to go through that same process that you did, where we'll create a theory of change. We'll come up with action steps, and we'll work on 3 indicators at a time that we feel can make the most impact in our school district. So that's kind of where we are as a cabinet. What I need from the Board of Education is we need a date for the month of February where we can have, where you and I, where I can facilitate the superintendent rubric for you. This has not been done since we had new leadership. So the rubric that we had done in the past really is not very helpful because of the change in administration. So in February, we would need, and my hope is that we'll be able to do it twice in February and then in June. Instead of, we won't get it done 3 times this year because we're so late beginning this. But if we could come together maybe by the end of the meeting today with the February date, that we could do that, that would start our the first of the year we'll have with where we are and where we're moving to. Thank you.
Okay, so you need a date today, right?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I would like one. Yes,
Can we look
ma'am.
at your schedules? And we can give you a date now. We can give you one.
And while we're doing that, can I ask,
Yes, ma'am.
and I'll be honest, I haven't looked at that section of the website lately, but could we make sure that those, not the scored instruments, but the instruments that we use for that portion for the board and for you are up so that the community can understand what we're looking
Yes,
at and
ma'am.
what we're measuring?
I'll make sure to do that.
Okay, thank
I just got clean copies from Ms. Nelder yesterday. And so I will get that up so that we can make sure people are aware of it.
Okay, what date did you have in mind, Ms. Lee?
Could we look at the 22nd through 24th? The week before, we have our work session and our board meeting
I was thinking we could do it after the work session and incorporate it all at one
on
time.
the 15th.
And what date is that?
The 15th is the work session.
I anticipate that to get through the whole thing, it'll take quite a while. We did it and we actually ended up doing it in 2 sessions because it can be mind-numbing work. So we can start, and if we decide that we need a second date to finish up, if we're getting late, we can always do that.
It is always, we never know how long our meeting is going to be.
Yes, ma'am.
And to have a second meeting, most of the time we're drained.
I know. And
And so-
it is difficult work because
Right.
it's, I mean, those of you who have participated in it already, you know that it is hard work to really look and take an honest look at what's going on in our district. And so we felt like when we did it as a cabinet, we couldn't, it was too much to do in one session. So we did half of it in one session, half in the next, so that we were fresh and we really did dig into it deeply.
And I also understand this new situation and also, and Ms.
Yeah.
King's situation because of their jobs.
Right.
And so I can drink a Sprite and be okay if you want to do it that
I'll
day.
bring you
I'm
Which
good.
is what I was gonna say. Typically where we run into trouble is when we don't plan time. Well, we don't
Right.
stop for a break. We
Yeah,
don't
if
stop
we
to
have a
get
break, then-
something
So we're
to
fine.
get out and walk around the building. But if we manage the day well and we have time, because so many people have schedules
So we'll
Absolutely.
be
that
okay.
are difficult to manage.
We can plan a lunch for you, the working lunch that day, and then have some snacks and protein during the afternoon to get you through, if
Maybe
that'll
Ms. Moore
work.
can Bring us some Benzo boxes.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Should we look at continuation date being prior to the meeting on Thursday, the 17th? If it was necessary.
Yeah, come in before the board meeting and do it early. That would be fantastic.
That would work. Okay, and maybe we won't need it, but if we do, we can, if we could knock it out that week, that would be really good, because that's really going, your input's really going to drive our work going through the rest of this academic school year. All right, thank you
So
so
we're talking
much.
about the 15th and possibly ended up on the 17th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. And at this time, we're going to ask Mr. Swain, Director of Student Services. He's going to give us a report on the discipline data.
Good morning.
Good
morning.
Swain.
Good morning.
So this is my first time before the board, so.
All right.
glad to be here. So I would like, I recommend that the Board of Education receive the discipline data for the month of November, which is attached to the agenda.
Can I just ask, is there a reason that we're presenting it versus putting it on the consent agenda? I actually kind of like it, but I'm just wondering what the rationale is.
I honestly do not have an answer to that question. Typically, it is on the consent agenda. However, this month it was put as a presentation. I am happy to do either.
But you know what? Here's what I like about it. Because we can talk about masks all we want, but what everybody stops breathing over are the gun shootings and all
That's
the
right.
things that are happening. And so to give people a realistic idea, as well as the what we're doing in Craven County that's different than some of those districts that are on the news. I mean, by the grace of God, it could be any of us any day. But I mean, I could clearly see the difference in what our system does and what that system did as a result of it. So I think it's actually a really great opportunity.
I do too. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea, because in the past, we've simply said discipline data with no explanation. No time for us to ask questions. So I think Mrs. Smith, it's a good idea, and I appreciate you being here.
Ms. Miller, Dr. Miller?
I think too, we're hearing a lot about behavior and social emotional issues and mental health as students have come back into school. And I think when we put things on consent agenda, sometimes they kind of get approved and we don't have those rich conversations
Right.
about what else do we need to do as a school system to partner with outside agencies and certainly with our parents to ensure that we are providing education, but also all the other needs that our students require to be successful. So I too would like to see us actually have this and have it as a discussion point, at least for the next little while, if that's okay with the board.
I agree. They leave our system over this.
I would add that was our practice for a number of years. And I think it offered the opportunity for us to have Mr. Swain stand up before us and speak to us. I think that's excellent too.
All right, and so would you like me to bring up each report? Okay. All right, so we can start with the discipline report, the actual, the crime violence report. Yeah, and this one is very difficult to see on a screen like this because it does include all of our campuses. And of course, each column has a heading of a particular incident. And the key for that is at the bottom of the spreadsheet here, the chart. And as you can see, we do have a few schools that have had reportable incidences. Some of them include possession of substances. Some of them include certain types of assaults. On the right hand of the spreadsheet, you have information concerning the total number of incidents for the month of November, as well as the total number of acts. Acts would be those incidences that are reportable. And then on the far right-hand side is the total number of suspensions to date. So that is a running total since the beginning of the school year of out-of-school suspensions.
Mr. Swain, we in the past too would reflect on the previous year. And so if you could bring that forward for the future, just to let us know, are we moving forward or backwards from the previous year?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that feedback.
I was just looking at I'm sorry, Ms. Smith.
I was just gonna say, I mean, that is a good idea to compare it, because there are certain times of year when behaviors seem to spike with children. So I mean, that would be a really good.
Yes, ma'am.
Comparison.
And probably the year prior to COVID, where we had students in the building, the whole year would be the best comparative. Yes, sir.
Ms. Swain, does yours, and I apologize because I couldn't sing very well, this report going to reflect different schools?
Yes, ma'am. All of the schools are listed there on the left, and so each row would represent the incidents or acts that came from that particular campus.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I was looking so hard at the PW, the weapons, and it seemed like they're at the middle school.
Yes, ma'am.
And the elementary school, and that really, I'm it's a real issue for me. You know, when we saying weapon, what type of weapon are we talking about?
Well, there is another report that has the actual weapons listed.
Okay.
And of course, there could be more detail given, I believe, probably in closed session if more information about a particular situation was needed. So if you wanted to go to the weapons report, we could take a look at.
And the reason why I ask is that because when parents hear weapon, you know, the mind immediately goes to a gun, and there are other types of weapon more so than a gun. So that's why I was asking that question.
And so this particular report is very, it's not wordy for a reason because of FERPA and, you know, that sort of information that would be considered confidential. However, just as for information, for instance, this is done month by month. You see in October, you know, things like a steak knife, pepper spray. Most of them, of course, involve a knife of some sort.
Reflecting on what's happened nationally too recently, I know that our SROs are directly involved anytime there's a behavior that's
yes, sir.
Suspect for.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Which means also that we're probably more effective in identifying possession of weapons on campus.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That would typically be the first response of the administrator would be to contact the SRO with an allegation of something like that being on campus. And then the final report under discipline would be the long-term suspension report. And this would reflect those that have gone completely through the process of being recommended for long-term suspension. And as of the end of November, we had 4 total students.
Could you define long-term suspension?
Long-term suspension in these instances would refer to being suspended from the school campus for the remainder of this school year.
And help those that might be in the room to understand what happens to those students then?
All right. As far as their.
Just kind of summary where they go for opportunities to continue their learning.
Okay. So in some instances, they could report to the Area Day Center, which is near Fort Totten Park. And they also, of course, can continue, if they're like a high school or middle school student, could continue working through Canvas on their coursework that they were currently in. And, the schools are recommended to continue to work with the families to try to help them access their education in different ways, depending on the circumstance. But as far as physically going to another place, Area Day is a resource that it could be used in the community.
Thank you. I won't ask you to do that every time, just because it's a new report
Yes, ma'am.
and people are not familiar with, we are, but they're not.
Ms. Swain, are you prepared to answer any questions about in-school suspension?
I am not at this time.
Dr. Miller, will you be available today to answer questions about the procedure for in-school suspension?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Are there other questions concerning the discipline report at this time?
Just keep it coming down.
Ms. King.
Sir,
Thank you.
who said it?
She
You
doesn't
said
have her
something, I'm
glasses
sorry.
on.
I don't have my glasses on. What'd you say?
Yeah, good.
Have a good day. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Swain. Appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
Dr. Diggs is going to.
Did we need to approve it?
Oh.
And he was just like information.
Mm-mm.
You just heard
It's
information.
always on consent agenda, we have to approve it.
Okay, let me get my bearings. Let me get my bearings. Okay.
Madam
so-
Chair, you normally approve this on the consent agenda, so it
Right,
is a little
so
different.
we
than
gotta approve
typically do.
everything right
Mhm.
now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, item by item.
I move we approve the discipline data as reported.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and second that we approve the discipline data as reported. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. It is approved. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
You're welcome. Take some tea.
Okay. Dr. Diggs.
Good morning, board
Good
members.
morning.
Morning.
I come to you first with the 2022-23 academic calendars and recommend the board receive information to consider adoption for the traditional academic calendar as well as the early college calendar. And I'm going to share quite a bit of information with you today because normally we would just present it today and you would discuss it later. But since we're asking for hopefully votes on everything this morning, then we will go through everything probably a little bit slower and go in detail. Just so you have the information, we're creating a school calendar and definitely for the public as well. Local school districts are required to adhere to a general statute that's listed there and it's also attached to the agenda. But just some criteria that I pulled out from that, although there's additional criteria, but there's some things that are definitely highlighted as we work on the calendar for everyone to be aware of. First day of school can be no earlier than the Monday closest to August 26th. The last day can be no later than Friday closest to June 11th. It must cover at least 9 calendar months, and this is for the traditional academic calendar. Includes a minimum of 185 days or 1,025 hours of instruction. And the teacher contract for 10-month employees must cover 215 days. It cannot be less or more than that. So in preparation for us creating our calendars for this year and bringing this word to you today, we convened a committee of school improvement team members on November 22nd. On that date, I held 3 different sessions, one at 7:30 in the morning, one at 12 and one at 4:30, just to give all the different participants an opportunity to participate at the time that was most convenient for them. And we gave them during that time the opportunity to review 2 drafts that we brought before them, but they could also create a calendar from scratch, which typically ends up being quite frustrating for people who are working on the calendar committee because they feel like they have a lot of leeway when we tell them to create a calendar from scratch. And then we give them general statute criteria, which limits them quite a bit. So during that time, we broke them up into breakout sessions. These were virtual meetings. We broke them into breakout rooms so that they could discuss the drafts that we presented to them and then come back and provide us with feedback after their discussion, as well as any suggestions or questions. The 2 traditional calendar drafts were shared with stakeholders. Following that, we did make a couple of improvements from the committee meeting. We shared the stakeholder calendars, draft A and draft B, which are also attached to the agenda for review and feedback during the window of November 30th to December 7th for them to let us know which calendar they supported the most and also to give us feedback. So the calendar survey yielded the following results. There were 1,070 total responses. Calendar A, which has first semester ending in January, received 30.1% of the support, which is 322 responses. Calendar draft B which has first semester ending before winter break, received 69.9% of the support, which was 748 of the responses. Some things that stood out during the feedback part of this, and this is where they were able to type short answers. There were 158 respondents who expressed support of first semester high school exams being before winter break, as we were doing this school year. And then there were 16 respondents who recommended moving some of the work days around on the calendar drafts before presenting them to you. Stephen, if you'll scroll up a little bit. Last year, the board asked for a breakdown of stakeholder feedback from those responses. So I went through all of the responses on the survey. And so you can see the breakdown of support. For community members, you can see the difference in the support between draft A and draft B. And there were 18 people who identified themselves as community members who responded. And all 18 of those respondents supported draft B. Elementary school staff, there were 178 who responded. And with some of this, as you guys are probably familiar, some of them may be an elementary school staff member or high school staff member, but they're also a parent. So they picked one of the ways to identify themselves. So 178 responses from elementary school staff, and you can see the breakdown between draft A, 63, draft B, 115. High school staff, 88 responses, 24 for draft A, 64 for draft B. Middle school staff respondents, 58, 18 for draft A, 40 for draft B. Parents, and again, these could also be someone who works with the school system, but chose to identify themselves as a parent on the survey. 614 total responses, 187 for draft A, 427 for draft B. Elementary and middle school students, we gave the students the opportunity, so we did give them a way to identify themselves if they chose to participate. There were 14, breakdown of 5 and 9. High school students, there were 100 high school students who responded, 25 for draft A, 75 for draft B, and then you can see the overall breakdown again listed there. And then just underneath that, after we got this information back, I took the responses from the survey to the superintendent's cabinet so that we can make any adjustments based on those trends that we saw. So we did make some slight adjustments, and there is a calendar draft that's attached to the agenda that's labeled draft B, revised following stakeholder survey. So you can see the differences in those. But as you can see, there was the most support for draft B, and looking at the trends of the responses, the calendar that Stephen has just pulled up on the screen is the one that we're bringing before you as the one that we felt the board should give the most consideration to in making your adoption decision. And like I said, this one had some slight changes from the draft B that we put out for stakeholder response based on their feedback before we brought it to you. So we did move a few of the work days around based on their feedback because there was some request to make the winter break a little bit longer and move some of the work days that were in August. So we did make some adjustments there, but still being aligned to the criteria that's stated in general statute as far as how many different types of days there were listed there. And then there is a legend at the bottom, so you can see the coding of all the different days for optional work days, required work days, vacation days, holidays, things like that. And then at the very bottom, we listed when the high school exams would be, so people would have that information. And on the second page, just giving you a breakdown again of the number of days in each semester, because that was the biggest difference between the calendars, what first semester would look like between draft A and draft B, which is quite similar to what we're doing this school year. And then the number of work days, as well as the number of early release days that were put into this calendar. And then just a couple of key notes at the bottom as a reminder. So sometimes it can be hard to take it all in when you're looking just at the calendar and all the colors. So that's why we did the second page. With first semester ending December 21st, particularly for the high school students, it would end a semester for the other grade levels, but they're not taking final exams or any end of grade or end of course tests. And then graduation, based on the date, the last day of school could be on Friday, June 9th or Saturday, June 10th, which is why at the bottom of the first page, you see that listed in red, because that is something that we would need to decide as well, what day graduation would be placed on. And I did speak with the high school principals of the 3 traditional high schools to get their input, and they were all in favor, based on the last day of school, of having graduation on that Friday, June 9th. They still have all of their staff there as a required work day. They are at the mercy of a skeleton crew on Saturday. And this is something that they shared, and having been in that position, I know that pain of waiting for people to show up so that you can have graduation. It takes quite a bit to pull that off. Another thing that in our discussion, and Ms. Friebel is definitely here, so you can get her input as well if needed. If there was inclement weather on June 9th, we could have June 10th as an inclement weather day on that Saturday without having to give people 2 tickets to try to quickly move into the gym, which no one's ever happy about. But I mean, we could be in a situation where we have inclement weather both days and we end up with that situation. But we wanted to be sure that we had talked about those options, particularly with the last day of exams. Most of the students will be finished on the 6th. The 7th would basically be a makeup day for final exams. So the seniors would have finish their exams and the counselors and administrators would have time to certify everyone for graduation by Friday morning if we went with that date. So that is the calendar information that I present to you for your consideration for adoption. The other calendar that is attached is the early college calendar. I work with the early college principals and some of their staff members to create that calendar. We do the first one, the traditional calendar, and then base the early college calendar off of some of those dates, as well as the Craven Community College calendar to be aligned with them. So you can see the difference in some of that information, whereas they start their work days at the end of July and the first day of school is on August, because they do operate under a different part of the general statute that's listed there. And then you can see how their work days and vacation days are broken down. There is a fall break built into their calendar, which is not a part of the teacher's 215-day contract. So they don't take leave, but they're also not getting paid. It's not a part of their work calendar. And then their graduation is held in May because they do finish a little bit early in alignment with the community college.
Any questions without Jiggs about the calendar? Any discussion?
You'll need to take them separately because you'll need a roll call. Because I'll tell you why. Same thing last year. Same reason why. The early college, fine, great, and support it. The traditional 21 days of instructional, that's a huge difference. Same concerns I had last year. To tell kids in high school on a block schedule that 21 days of instruction don't matter is a hard pill for me to swallow at this level where we're supposed to be putting instruction as the priority, especially at a time when we've had 4 years of interrupted instruction. So, and I appreciate the stakeholder input and I appreciate that they're there, but that's less than 10%. Less than 10% of our students, if you take the whole 1,000 in there, that's less than 10%. So, but I appreciate it. I'm not going to give anybody a hard time if that's what everybody wants, but I can't do it.
Ms. Hughes?
I'm agreeing with Ms. Smith on this one. As a mom of a high school student, I've seen the stress that she has been under this semester. The weight loss, the frustration, the zero life, the homework until 10, 11, 12 o'clock or later every night. This is not a win. I want to align with the community. I want to align with the community colleges. I want early graduates to be done and not have to come back in January to take exams if they want to go to the military or go ahead and start college. I want them to be able to do this. And I squarely lay the blame on the General Assembly because they will not let us set our calendars. There's not a win in this. But if my kid would have 21 less days this year, after what I've seen, and I voted for them to get finished before Christmas. Teachers and students are dying with this calendar that they have this first semester of this year. It's been terrible. I don't even want to vote on it. That's the truth. I don't even want to vote on this. I would really like to see us be able to start school, like August the 8th?
August 15th would give us 2 additional weeks. That's the General Assembly.
That would be wonderful.
Right. Decision. We don't qualify for a waiver based on inclement weather like some of the counties in the West because we have not had enough years of consistently missing school. Basically saying we haven't had enough hurricanes, basically, to justify that. But it states that in the general statute that we don't qualify.
Dr. Miller?
And I just want to speak to this, particularly with our parents who are just kudos to the folks that consistently come every month and give input to us. And this is where I would call on them to partner and help us. I talked with Representative Steve Tyson the other night at a dinner. He wanted to know what date could he advocate for, and I said, I don't need a date. I need you to let the local folks, including our parents, community, local board and teachers, make decisions about our calendar.
Right.
And what works for our community. Because in cabinet, we had the conversation, and I was honest with the board when I sent the calendars for you to start reviewing early. I don't like any of these calendars because I want to do what's best for kids first and foremost. And none of these are ideal, but we're given a box that we have to work in, and we either have to align with the community college and have exams before Christmas, which many of our families and students will tell us they want, and then have 21 less days of instruction, which terrifies me as an educator of what we're going to put on our teachers to cover. And our job as educators is not to cover curriculum, is to uncover curriculum for kids so that they can get what they need. We took the calendar B that we got feedback on, and cabinet tweaked it even after the feedback, trying to take in all the comments. So kudos to Dr. Diggs for not just letting folks pick a calendar because we weren't voting, we were getting feedback, but also for giving us input on both of those calendars. So calendar B was the one with the highest interest level, but we also took their comments and tried to embed that, such as having 3 weekends during Christmas break, so our families can plan an extended vacation, and for our military families that travel out of town. But I would just say 21 fewer days terrifies me. There's other parts of the calendar. I don't like any of those. What I really need our public, and particularly our parents, to do is help us advocate to give local control back to our communities and our school district and our Board of Education to do what's best for our community and our students.
Amen. Because what you're saying sounds a lot like the discussions that we used to have with the year-round calendar when we had the discussion. I get that the military families want the vacation. I get that I would have wanted a vacation. I get that my kids probably could have done okay with 21 days less. They probably could have gotten through it, worked hard. Your accelerated kids could have, but there's a lot of our kids who are struggling. And so you're talking about, when I hear those things, I'm hearing what's best for the teachers, what's best for the parents, what's best for the people who can take the vacations, what's best. There are a lot of kids who never take a vacation, who've never left my town, who don't know what an elevator is, never been on the elevator unless our schools take them on that field trip. And so they're the ones who are going to struggle. It's 4 weeks, guys. That's 4 weeks.
Ms. Muse? Well, the other thing that I've mentioned too, I mean, we have a brand new assistant principal starting in our district, and I'm assuming he came from Pitt County, so he may live in Pitt County. So his children go to school in Pitt County, and we have so many school systems that touch us, Jones, Onslow, Pamlico, Carteret, that touch us. And we have people that work in our district, but their kids may go to school because they want, not because they don't want their kids to go to school here, but they want to go to school with, kids they grew up with. And so when we have calendars like last year, my spring break was 1 week and my child's spring break was another week, right? So, I would like for us to be able to do some partnering since, people commute to work here, to maybe try and align some, especially spring break is the big one. Christmas is pretty straightforward, but we're just tied up when it comes to a calendar. We can't, there's not a win. It's awful. This was the reason I didn't want to come today.
I appreciate your work. Don't take this as any negativity
Oh,
on
no,
you or the work that you're doing.
I lay this squarely at your
clearly
feet.
understands
There's not an easy decision.
No, thank you. I do want to make clear that year after year, the House has passed a calendar, local ability to control calendar. It stops in the Senate. It stops at the leadership in the Senate, and they've been unyielding. And we have tried to understand what the issue is, but we've not been able to. And when I say that, I'm talking about not only us individually, but the School Board Association, exactly what the hanging point is. At one time, it was thought to be related to summer employment of students related to amusement parks and things of that, and restaurants at the beach and things like that. But I think that that has pictures changed now. So if we could persuade Senator Berger to allow us to do this, he is the focal point. And that's well understood.
I believe he was very vocal last year that it was not going to happen.
Yes, yes. But I don't want to, when I say the legislature, I don't want to blame our House. I know that they have worked hard on our behalf, and I know that they will continue to do that. So
I think one dilemma we may run into is that even if it's granted like late July, then we're telling parents at the last minute that to be prepared to start school early, not just parents and students, but our instructors as well.
Right, and then if they have an August, 20, what's the start date?
For the first day of school, the 29th is the first day we can start.
So if they have planned a trip August 20th, and we're allowed to start school August the 15th or before then.
He said it would, for staff, it would move everything up about 4 weeks because they would have to start their work days.
Finding out in July doesn't, and a lot of vacations are prepaid on the front end, so then what?
Okay. Ms. Miller, Dr. Miller.
One other point I did want to make, the issue particularly this year is they don't give a date what the calendar law, and it says it in here, is we must start the closest Monday to August 26th. So if the August 26th were on a Wednesday, we can go back and start that previous Monday. This year, it's even worse than last year with the number of days because it's at the end of the week. It's on a Friday. So the closest Monday is the following week. So last year, we started a week earlier, but just because of what day August 26th happens to fall on, this year, we can't go back to the previous Monday because it's not the closest by 3 days. So it costs us another week of instruction. So again, the magic date of August 26th, I really don't understand, but I do understand that we're constantly struggling with making a calendar that fits in all these guidelines and that we know is best for kids. And again, I will say personally, professionally, I don't like any of these options, but we have to go with one that fits currently within the law. And again, Representative Tyson has agreed to sit down and talk with us. I actually invited him to attend our cabinet meeting so that we can have interactive dialogue, not just about calendar, but about lots of things that we need their help with. So if they give us the responsibility to educate our kids locally and hold us accountable, then I'm asking for them to give us a responsibility to develop a calendar that aligns with that expectation.
Anyone else? Victor? I'm sorry, Victor.
Before we move on, can we hear why was there overwhelming response for the calendar that we had? What was the pros to it? What was the cons to it? I would also like to hear from our principal of the year and our teacher of the year and our parent, if they are privy to seeing what this calendar is, because at the end of the day, we still have to, whether we like it or not, we have to vote on it, what was given to us. So we're doing a lot of talking about what we want, but let's deal with what's at our hands right now. And I would like to get more feedback on that situation. So when we vote, we can vote in line with what is best for our community.
Well, from the survey, the people who did make comments, the overwhelming number of comments, and I think I listed that there were quite a few in favor of having final exams for the high school students before winter break. The high school students, several of them left comments about that very thing and wanting to actually have a break. They didn't want to have to study during break. We want to be able to have winter break. And for those who are wanting to graduate early, having that option and being able to start at the community college, if that's their choice, on that same schedule. So that was an overwhelming number of comments. That was a topic that was commented about the most.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Really just echo everything that has already been said. There are a group of students and staff who want to be able to go home for the holiday break and start the next chapter when they return, whether that be the next semester, which in the high school is basically the new school year. or, move on to community college or whatever that next chapter looks like. All of that is wonderful, but 21 days of instruction is 21 days of instruction. And I know that I have people in my building who are probably listening to me right now who aren't real happy. But as someone who is supposed to be focused on instruction and on student learning, 4 weeks of instruction is significant. And like Mrs. Smith said, for some kids, they're going to roll on with it and they could stay at home and still be successful. But the majority of our kids need to be in a classroom with a qualified teacher for every single minute that they can possibly be in there. So as a school leader, 21 days of missed instruction or 21 fewer days of instruction is scary to me.
My biggest issue with the calendar this year was that we didn't have a break. I think that was everybody's issue, including my kids at home. We just all needed a break. And so this calendar gives us a break each month, which I'm grateful for. I'm a middle school teacher, so my babies are going to high school. So them having 4 weeks of less instruction when they first get there, I don't like that. And if you talk about all learners, I just don't think that all learners can thrive in that. Some kids can, but not all learners. And we're here to support all learners. So, but I get the weekends, we're military, we go to Philly every year. So long Christmas breaks, that means a lot to us. But again, it's about all learners. So yeah, it's just not a good solution.
Okay, let me get our parent, then I'll come back to, Ms. Clark.
So I'm like, because I have 2 seniors this year, and on top of, one was on the high school volleyball team, applying for colleges. On top, if you took 21 days out of that, that'd have been a nightmare. I mean, I can't even imagine the stress level alone just with the, just applying to college on top of all of that. So as a senior, I think that'd be tough. It'd just be really tough. I also feel that, and I have a middle schooler as well, and he does not need to go with 21 days when he starts school, because he's not going to do anything over the summer. I can promise you that. He's not going to study or do anything. He's not going to read a book. He's going to be in a swimming pool. He's going to be at the beach. He's going to be playing baseball. He's not going to do anything. So you take 21 days from him, and yes, if he saw this right now, he's going to yell at me, but that's fine. I'm kind of used to it as a being a 14-year-old.
That's what families.
Yeah. So I agree with, and I was actually fortunate enough to be in one of the breakout groups. So I was actually fortunate enough to be part of that. And after listening to all the conversations, and my daughters were home, and I talked to them, and we came to an agreement. I had them look at the calendars with me. And the discussion we had was, yes, it would be so nice to not study over the Christmas break. It'd be wonderful. But the exam schedules, the way they have it set up in high school is beautiful. You don't take 2 exams in a day. You have some leeway so you can study the week. They review the week before. You get some time, you take one and you go home and you've got a whole afternoon. I mean, I think they're out at 1. So they've got time to study And the one maybe harsh thing I'll say is, we're preparing these kids for the future. And when you're in the future, you don't really get a break. I mean, it's a hard thing to say, but high school is that's your last little, roots of stepping out before you kind of own your own. So they need to learn how to study anyway for whatever they're going to do. Even if it's not in college, you have to be prepared. And that's just kind of my 2 cents on that one.
Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Neither option is palatable, and we've got to vote on one. But I want the whole board to remember, as well as the public, that you don't get to pick and choose what option you want to take. Specifically, there was this hue and cry that we didn't listen with regard to mask. And now that it's something different, we decide we're going to disregard what the majority of the public wants. I too think that we should not miss 21 days of instruction. That being said, I go on record again as saying that when we get public input or stakeholders input, it is advisory only. That's my point. Thank you.
Are we gonna listen to, do the students have anything they want to say about the calendar? Oh, you're middle school? Oh, so y'all gotta do whatever we say, right? I would like to say a couple things, because I'd like to process. I don't like to speak fast. Sometimes you speak fast, you speak wrong. I'm concerned about the low responses from our elementary and middle school staff, which probably is because they feel like it's a high school thing, but they are just as essential as anyone else. So I would like for them to make sure that their voices are heard, even if it is for advisory purposes. You know, we can't listen to them if they don't speak. So we need for our middle school staff and elementary staff and students to begin to speak. So because your pen has voice. So always make sure you take the opportunity to speak when asked to, so that you can defend what you've chosen to do. As my background is high school, a high school English teacher, did that for about 20 years. And I am concerned too that the number 12 or 21, I didn't do math, is not an ideal situation. However, I do know that quality versus quantity is something that teachers do. So I mean, because I can see teachers who were sitting here or on the committee thinking about pacing guys and those type of things that they would do if they were slighted, 3 weeks or 4 weeks of education. And if you've been in a classroom lately, you know that there are different types of learning taking place in the classroom. So teachers have become magicians in the classroom, which means that they have been taking little to make much. So if we were to decide on listening to the voice of our respondents and going with draft B, I do believe that that would be something that our teachers would be able to handle. I'm just like everyone else. I've seen the foundational gaps that we have and we continue to have. And I'm not so sure as lengthening the time is going to cure those foundational gaps that people have been having for years, that we have been working on for years. So I'm not too sure if that's the answer. Sometimes lengthening things kind of drags it out and tires people out. So you don't always get the push that you may want or that we may need to see in those last 4 weeks, because even right now, our minds are geared toward the end of this week or the beginning of next week. But now I'm not saying instruction is not occurring, because I know instruction is occurring. It's just probably occurring in a different way than what we are all used to. So I said that to say, I like listening to the voice of those who speak, because I don't think it makes sense to me to ask people to speak if we're not going to listen to voices. That's all I have to say.
Just to respond to something Ms. King brought up about the voices of the staff, the committees that met on November 22nd, just so you have an idea of the makeup of those committees. Of those staff members, 41 of them were elementary school staff members, 14 were middle school, 14 were high school, 13 were elementary administrators, 9 were middle school administrators, 4 were high school administrators. So there was obviously more elementary, because when we look at our school improvement teams, we have more elementary schools and obviously more of those staff members. The breakdown of their favoritism for one calendar over the other was identical to the survey. It was 70% for draft B and 30% for draft A. So it pretty much mirrored what we got from the stakeholder input.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Just so you have that information.
Thank you.
I know this is way early we may not even be able to figure it out, but the biggest negative impact for not being able to have exams before Christmas impacts our seniors, obviously, because they're focused on getting on with the rest of my life. I hear that from my daughter all the time. She's ready to get on with the rest of her life. Is there a pulse with schedules, with kids' schedules for our juniors this year that would be seniors next year, who who would graduate early, plan to go to military, start college? I mean, is there a pulse of kids who are headed that way, and how many it would negatively impact to not have exams before Christmas?
I do not have that information. I don't know if those were the students who responded to the survey.
Right.
And, wanted to have input because it would impact them the most. We did not have them identify themselves by grade level within the high school. So it's hard to tell if there would be a number, but obviously there will be fewer that are graduating early than are staying the whole year.
Right.
And going back to something else you mentioned earlier about pacing, that is something, last year we didn't adopt the calendar until April. So there wasn't a lot of time for master schedules, scheduling students and working on pacing guides. So having it earlier, I'm not saying it makes up for 21 missed days, but it does give us more planning time and working with the learning systems coaches and teachers in order to plan in advance for that, because we did not have a lot of time to plan for that.
I had Mr. iPod, Mr. Dove, and then our principal here. Mr. iPod, you had your hand up?
Well, actually, I was going to make a motion.
Okay, we'll come back. Mr. Dove?
And just to make it perfectly clear on the stakeholder feedback by group, every elementary school staff, high school staff, middle school staff, of course, we know every parent had an opportunity
Ms. Wagner pushed this out through Blackboard, phone call, social media, to every single person connected to the school system. So, and even people who are just on Facebook.
Okay.
Given their input as community members. So everyone did have an opportunity.
Let's go.
And I just wanted to add, you all have another difficult decision in front of you. I don't envy you, your positions at all. Keep in mind, and I know that you all have seen this play out over the past year and a half, whatever the decision is today, like we'll adjust and we'll handle it. I think a key piece is what Dr. Diggs just said, and the timing. If we have a calendar now, then we can pay special attention to which classes are offered the semester where we have a fewer number of days, individual students who are placed in specific courses that first semester versus that second. Timing is key. So whatever decision you make, we'll make it happen. There will be happy people and there will be unhappy people, as you all know, but we'll make it work. And again, that extra time will be significant.
Okay, I'm like Mr. iPod. I think that we had a lot of discussion about it. And I think everybody pretty much have already decided what they want to do. And so Mr. iPod will, and it's not an easy decision for anybody. It is not an easy decision. It is not. And but mine is, and I understand the 21 days and I know that, but like Ms. Friedman said, that if that went to that, then you have enough, they would have had enough time to make plans to whatever, to get adjusted to that.
Ms. Boomer, before you do that, we also want to be sure we list the graduation date, if you, whichever calendar we go with, so that's a part of the final version.
All right, Mr. iPod.
Thank you, Chairman Boomer. I move that we approve draft B of the traditional academic calendar for 22-23 with the graduation date June 9th as primary, June 10th as backup.
Second.
It has been moved and second that we adopt the 2022-23 academic calendar B with the graduation date being June 9th and what was the backup date?
10th.
June 10th as the backup date. And it has been moved and second that we do this. Are you ready for the, we need a roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
We got a roll call vote.
Just to repeat the motion, calendar B with graduation date June 9th and June 10th as the backup graduation date.
Right.
Ms. Francis Boomer.
I do, yes.
Ms. Naomi Clark.
No.
Mr. Victor Dove.
Yes.
Mr. Carl Ipock.
Yes.
Ms. Stephanie King.
Yes.
Ms. Kelly Muse.
I hate to do it, but I'm gonna do it, yes.
Ms. Kimberly Smith.
No.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yes, 2 no, motion passes.
Okay, so we'll be looking at calendar big. Thank you, Dr. Diggs and the cabinet for doing this.
Thank you. I have the next item. This one
Okay.
will be easier for you. This is to bring to you an out-of-state field trip request. Recommending that you approve an out-of-state field trip for New Bern High School, the indoor percussion, to go to Powhatan, Virginia. I Googled how to say it, and there are 5 different ways to say it, so I'm just gonna go with Powhatan, Virginia. It's about 20 miles west of Richmond. March 5th through the 6th, and as required per policy 3320 school trips, it requires the board to approve all out-of-state field trips. This trip has been reviewed and recommended by the principal, Mr. Simmons of New Bern High School, as well as myself in the Academic Services Division. The bulleted items, the detailed itinerary, the safety plan, all of that information has been reviewed and would be on file in our office. It's not attached. It's just a cover sheet, basically, that's attached to your agenda, because if the trip is approved, we want to keep that information confidential and only with the people who need to know that information, but it is on file in our office. And the fundraising opportunities, they are planning to have a Chipotle share night as well as a mattress sale to raise funds. And they've already raised some funds previously because they haven't been able to go on any out-of-state field trips. So they had some money left over from previous times. So we would need your vote on this field trip.
Can I get a motion for this?
Like a
Dr.
question.
Clark?
Just a question. Dr. Diggs, I'm pretty sure you have. Just want to make sure that the chaperones have undergone the necessary background checks.
Yes, and we did change that part of our process this year. We have a list of we'll have a list of the chaperones at least 2 weeks prior to the trip. And the number of chaperones meet the policy requirements so that anytime, if anything comes up, we have that list of names and don't have to go back.
Thank you.
Any more discussion, questions? Okay, I need to get a motion.
I'm so moved that we pass the field trip.
Okay,
Second.
it has been moved and second that this field trip at New Bern High School indoor percussion with that name in Virginia be approved.
Powhatan.
Powhatan.
Powhatan. Okay.
All right,
It's the Indian tribe.
this is what time.
Yes.
All right, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, so it is approved. They
Thank you, board
have
members.
their wonderful trip. Mr. Jason Griffin, Director of Elementary Education, Federal Programs. If you are asleep, you will awake now.
I'm not sure how excited I can make it.
No, right?
Discussion about a policy. But, good morning.
Good morning.
This morning, I would like to recommend that the Board of Education receive as a first reading policy 1320, 3560 on Title I Parent-Family Engagement. This is a current existing policy, and the North Carolina Board of Association has recommended updates to the parental notices at the bottom of page 5 and the top of page 6 to align with the language of the Every Student Succeeds Act. Any questions?
Any questions?
I have one. So if my school is Title I, then I have to know, I can know the qualifications of the teacher.
Yes, ma'am.
What if my school is not Title I? Do I not need to know the qualifications of the teacher?
You do.
That's all I want to make sure. So either way, we need to make sure.
And Ms. King, one of the things that we've done specifically with Title I, we were kind of ahead of the curve on this. So all 17 of our Title I schools on the websites have the information that's outlined what parents can specifically request.
Thank you.
And, our non-Title I schools can use that language as well.
Yes.
Any questions? I need to get a motion to approve.
No, these are first reads.
These first reads.
I was gonna say approve for first reading.
Yes, you can.
No,
Yes, you can.
Well, you
I
can, but
think
we
you
don't,
can.
we don't
Ms.
have
Smith?
to approve them on first read, but you can.
She's the chairperson.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
I just want to also add that I've gotten a lot of feedback on our Title I schools, parent nights and their movies and all that great stuff that the district did. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback and how much fun everybody had with all that. So It was a real good thing.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we're gonna send this to the consent agenda.
Okay,
The next one.
that's it. That's all.
Who's-
Oh,
Hey, I tell you what, I don't know about y'all, but I need a break. Thank you.
Uh-oh.
Thank you.
Let's take a 10-minute break.
Oh, thank you for that.
That's because it's one of the-
I call this meeting of the Craven County Board of Education back to order, please. It was a good break. We all needed it, and so let us prepare to finish up the remainder of the meeting. And we shall begin the second part of the meeting with Mr. Swain.
Hello again.
Hello. All right.
I will be here presenting a number of policies before you this morning. The first one is policy number 1710-4020-7230, discrimination and harassment prohibited by federal law. This, of course, is an existing policy, and there are some recommended changes by the State Board of Education. The first one is found in paragraph 1, and the recommendation is to change the phrase from over 40 to 40 and over. I got a chuckle out of that because I fit both categories. So. But that was a recommended change. And then in the legal references section, there was some minor changes to that. So the recommendation is that the board adopt as first reading this policy.
You have some more, right? Is this the only one you have?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we're gonna do all of them at one time.
Right. The second one is policy 1740-4010, student and parent grievance procedure. I recommend that the Board of Education receive as a first reading this policy. This policy has been reviewed by the superintendent's cabinet. It is an existing policy. The following update is required by the North Carolina School Board Association, which is updates to the cross references section. And then the following updates are recommended by the North Carolina School Boards Association. In subsection B3, deleting the sentence referencing the repealed policy 1720-4015, 7225. Also deleting the unnecessary definition of official and adding the definition of parent in section B. In section D, adding a statement that students can be accompanied by a parent, and delete similar language found in section E due to its redundancy. And then throughout the policy, there are clarifications to terms used for the various actors that may participate in the grievance process. For instance, guardian, distinguishing between guardian or parent. There's also an optional recommendation that includes some minor editorial changes.
Okay, Mr. Alpert.
And back to Mrs. Kim Smith's earlier comment, if it's a change in the law, then it's required. If it's offered by the School Board Association related to the change in the law, then they're saying this is required. Everything else is at their suggestion to us and ours to adopt.
Thank you for that.
The next policy is 1742-5060, responding to concerns. I recommend that the Board of Education receive as a first reading this policy. Policy has been reviewed by the superintendent's cabinet. The following update is required by the North Carolina School Boards Association and updates to the cross-reference section. And then the following update has been recommended by the North Carolina School Board Association, revises subsection A6 and adds a new subsection A7 to align the relevant complaint process with recent policy revisions.
I have a question, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not my intention to be pugnacious with you, but I want you to look at B2.
B2, ma'am?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir. Where it says any board member or employee receiving a concern should verify that the concern has been appropriately referred to him or her, and if not, assist the person submitting the concern by identifying the appropriate personnel. Perhaps I'm just reading too much into it, but quite frankly, board members shouldn't be trying to fix things themselves anyhow, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So I wonder, board members, Mr. Gatra, do we need to change that, or this is the first reading? Should I just leave it alone?
I think what is contemplated is that, since you are elected officials.
Yes, sir.
You're kind of the point guard to the basketball team. And it's not your job to always shoot. Sometimes it's your job to pass the ball.
Yes,
to
sir.
the right
Yes.
person to shoot.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what is contemplated.
So my inference, and I think you agree that perhaps I'm reading too much into it, sir.
I'm not gonna say that you're reading too much into it, but we all know in basketball teams, sometimes the point guard shoots too much. And they don't, pass enough. And so, I don't think your inference reads too much.
The spirit of Christmas thing. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Any other questions on that policy? The next policy is the 3610 counseling program, and I will say that this one is quite a bit more involved. It is my recommendation that the Board of Education receive this as first reading. I will note that majority of this is a reorganization of material that was already in the existing policy under a more user-friendly system of headings. However, there was one mandatory change that was recommended or required by the State Board of Education, and that is in subsection E under the employee mandatory reporting. And that is the statement that says any counselor or other staff member who knows or has cause to suspect maltreatment of a child must report the information as provided in 4240, 7312, child abuse and related threats of child safety, and as required by law. That the addition of that statement was required by the State Board of Education. The other information were recommendations by the State Board of Education as far as the organization of it and some other minor changes.
That is not a new law. Yes.
No.
And it should, and it's so very important, especially today. You're hearing things, and when we have to take our children serious, if they say something, it needs to be looked into. You can't assume that they're just talking.
In fact, you have a legal duty.
You do. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. The next policy is number 3620. And I do need to make the board aware that there was an error on the abstract for this particular policy, and that was completely my fault. I had put in there that there was information that was mandated. However, actually, all of the information that is a recommendation of the state board. I do ask that the Board of Education receive this as a first reading. I will note that in section A, the policy on requirements for participation in extracurricular activities in regards to attendance is strongly recommended by the State Board of Education. The other information is simply recommended.
Any questions?
No, but I would really like for people to look at this policy, because I look at this one and some of the things just kind of, I don't know, it just feels weird to me. So, I mean, the public, these are up, we've got 30 days till January. I'll look at them. Give us some input.
Yes, ma'am. And if I will also say too, that because it's referring to extracurricular activities that involves athletics, which of course involves the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. Some of this information is the policies of that organization, which governs the high school athletics. And so if anybody would like information about what's recommended in the policy as it connects to High School Athletic Association, please let me know and I'll be able to get you those references.
Okay.
Any other questions concerning that? Okay. The next policy is 4040-7310, staff student relations. I recommend that the Board of Education receive as first reading the changes to this policy. The following update has been recommended by the North Carolina School Boards Association to add the phrase that would justify automatic revocation of the employee's license pursuant to General Statute 115C 270.35B to the paragraph under subsection C4, replacing the word which. So there's a phrase, they recommended a phrase instead of just that one word. And then to change the word child to student in subsection C4, and then some minor changes under the legal references.
Question? Okay.
Told you I'd be with you for a while this morning.
That's good.
All right. Policy 4110, immunizations and health requirements for school admission. I recommend that the superintendent's cabinet receive as a first reading, policy 4110. This is an existing policy. The State Board of Education requires the following updates under the section on additional requirements. All students entering the 7th grade or who have reached age 12, whichever comes first, are required to receive the following: a booster dose of Tdap if they have not previously received it. And I'm going to look at Nurse Matt, because I don't know how to say this word very well. Menin. There you go. Conjugate vaccine.
I love it.
Ollie, you don't want me teaching medical terms. But, and then all students entering the 12th grade or who have reached age 17 are required to receive a booster dose of the MCV. The State Board of Education requires the following updates under the section other. Change the word references to resources. Any questions about that?
Sir. Okay.
Policy 4150, school assignment and reassignments. I recommend the superintendent's cabinet receive as a first reading changes to policy 4150. This, of course, is an existing policy. These recommendations, however, have not been recommended by the State Board of Education. These revisions or proposed changes are the result of the work done by a committee consisting of district leaders, principals, and school data managers who met at the beginning of November to discuss solutions and possible changes for this policy. The recommended changes of the policy focus on aligning the policy to current reassignment practices, establishing a clear timeline for the process, and clarifying language in the policy regarding the process for appealing a reassignment request that has been denied. I do appreciate all of the principals and data managers who worked with me on this, this policy review. One of the things I'd like to bring to your attention is the request to move up the timeline so that all of the reassignment forms requested by the parents would begin on March 1st. And that open opportunity would last until March 31st. And that would be for existing families. That would not mean the ones that would be moving in later. Right. That would allow us to process the reassignments, to allow for principal input as well, and then to have all of the decisions made by the end of April so that notification can go out on May 1st of whether or not the reassignment has been approved or denied. And then, of course, if a parent would or family is dissatisfied with the determination, the parent can appeal in writing within 5 days of that May 1st notification. And then, of course, if this, once the superintendent makes the determination, if the parent still is not satisfied, they would have the opportunity to appeal to a panel of the board. Part of this is the hopes that much of this work can be completed before July 1st, so that principals have a better opportunity to solidify their class list, to know who will be in their school, and to prepare for their families. Are there questions on this?
I would just ask for some really good public information and help getting that word out. Especially in that transition year when they're expecting them a later. I'm assuming that the people who do this regularly, who are already in and have requested it, that you will notify them that the date is.
Yes.
But then to the general public, to make sure they know that deadline has changed.
Yes, ma'am. We definitely, if the board approved the change in the timeline, we would definitely put out with the help of Ms. Wagner, a PR blitz of getting all that information out as soon as possible so that they can be prepared. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any questions? All right.
Okay. The next policy is 4270, 6145, concussion and head injury. I recommend that the Board of Education adopt as a first reading concussion and head injury. This is an existing policy. However, the State Board of Education requires adding the following information. In section B, the reference to the North Carolina High School Athletic Association policy that requires every student athlete and their parent to view the concussion education video prior to each sports season. And then there's also a legal reference update.
So how is that communicated? The coaches communicate that with the parents now? How is that?
Coaches and athletic directors, perhaps even school administration. Many teams will have a preseason meeting. Some schools do preseason in the sense of fall sports and things like that, or then winter sports and then spring sports. So schools are doing it different ways, but it falls into the school ADs and the coaches.
So they already do this. This is already required. We're just putting in policy.
Yes, ma'am.
You have to sign some type of form to say that they are aware of this.
Yes, ma'am. And part of that, there's a packet that is, part of
Right.
signing your kids up for athletics.
Right.
Includes all the requirements and this information as well.
Right. Any questions? Okay. One.
All right, and I believe this is the last one for me. Policy 4309, the Code of Student Conduct. I recommend that the Board of Education adopt as a first reading, policy 4309. This is an existing policy, and there are required changes set forth by the State Board of Education. In section C, to add the word non-discriminatory to the description, and that is in reference to dress code. Under number 1, the sentence would read, violates a reasonable, non-discriminatory dress code adopted and publicized by the school. So it's an addition of that word. It also updates language in the last sentence of section K, criminal behavior, to reflect the language in the administrative code regarding reporting certain crimes to the Department of Public Instruction. So on that particular one, it was a reference to who is the information being reported to. Yes, so at the bottom of page 16, certain crimes must be reported to, originally it was the State Board of Education, but the change is the Department of Public Instruction. And then there's also some updates to the legal citations of the legal references section.
You made it through.
Are there any
Great job.
questions?
Any questions? We were dreaming about policies tonight. Thank you. Thumbs up to have these sent to for consent for first reading. Thank you, Mr. Swain. Great job. Ms. Toaster.
Morning, board members.
Good morning.
Just a couple more policies for your dreams tonight. I come before you today to recommend that the board receive as a first reading policy 4340, school level investigations. This is an existing policy, and the following updates have been recommended by the North Carolina School Boards Association. First, there's a modification in the first paragraph to be consistent with policies that assign the senior human resources official or others to investigate certain matters. In the second paragraph, there's a recommendation to add possibility of disciplinary consequences for making false statements during an investigation. And in the fourth paragraph, there is a recommendation to provide an exception to the investigative process steps where other policies require a more specific response.
Questions? Okay.
Second, I come before you with a recommendation to receive as first reading policy 6325, parking areas for students. This also is an existing policy, and the recommendation by the School Boards Association in the second paragraph is a provision providing notice that school officials may conduct routine patrols of student parking lots and the exteriors of student vehicles for any reason.
So we have any problem with that?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's thumbs up. I'm sorry.
With this section here,
The-
camera situation, checking, that's not part of this section.
No,
Bring
we'll
it
get
in.
to it.
Okay.
Yes, and
Thank you.
yes. All right, thumbs up to place this on consent. for first reading. I'm sorry, Mr. Gafford.
So the purpose of the sentence, we already have the authority to do what the sentence says. The purpose of the sentence, I presume, is to put people on notice that you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy in school parking lots. And so I wanted to make sure part of your reasonable expectation of privacy that you don't have is you might be videotaped.
Exactly.
So I just want to make sure that was.
Oh, no, I'm fine with that. We'll bring that part up.
Yeah, he was talking about something. He was talking about
Something else.
No, that's okay.
Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Good.
Mr. Lee,
Thank you.
we was quite be on break, but we've already had a break, so you good. Yes.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
No policies, just begging money, which seems like every time I come here, that's what I'm doing. But anyway, I'm bringing forth the recommendation from Cabinet to approve the purchase order for staff device replacements. Excuse me, as you know, we've been very busy replacing student devices over the past few months. And that will be coming to a conclusion probably sometime toward the end of January. So our next group that we need to touch are teachers. So these will be, this purchase order would be to replace teacher devices. The funding for this will come from the proceeds from the sale of the 612 student devices that you approved at the last board meeting that we were able to accept that money, $707,000 roughly. And then the balance of this will come from fund balance, an allocation from fund balance. And you may ask why fund balance and not ESSER. We had a pretty long and in-depth conversation in Cabinet. And really, ESSER, the spirit of ESSER is learning loss and environmental conditions. It's sort of defined what you're supposed to use that money for. We were thinking that a more appropriate use of, or the additional funding for this, more appropriate place for that to come from would be fund balance. I mean, fund balance is set for this, a one-time purchase to address needs in the district. So after discussion, that's why we sort of settled in on fund balance and not ESSER if you have any questions about that. It will be Apple Macbooks. We convened a panel of teachers, and I saw Kelly come into the room, it seems like forever ago, and sort of asked the staff, what are your thoughts about a device replacement? And they wanted to stay with Apple. And, since the student devices are Apple product, it sort of makes logistical sense for the staff devices to be Apple as well. And Dr. Miller may want to add, she's had some individual conversations with teachers, and I think they support that as well.
And I did, certainly when we have the student devices and we have TVs, there are additional devices that you can use to hook these up. But as you remember, when we went to Apple products, everybody was a little afraid, myself included. Now it's hard for me to use another computer because I'm pushing buttons and nothing happens when you get used to this. So once we kind of committed to Apple with our student devices, we certainly want our staff devices to match those. We understand they're a little more expensive, but we believe in college, they require typically Apple devices so that we're preparing our kids for the world beyond, here with us. So I did reach out to teachers. Of course, they shared with me, the first question I was asked, one of the first questions when I was named superintendent is, do you like Apple? My response was, it doesn't matter what I like. What do you like? It's not what I like. It's what our teachers need to educate our students. And at this point in my conversations with teachers, they continue to support Apple products. So I wanted to make that clear because they are a little more costly, but I want to make sure we're providing our teachers with the resources they need to prepare our students for life beyond high school.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. And the other thing that we're excited about, we'll collect the old devices, obviously. And as we sold back the student devices, we'll have the opportunity to sell these back. We're going to take a portion of them and outfit our TAs. We're going to take some of the better conditioned ones that we collect, make sure our TAs have devices. We'll probably build up our spare inventory with some of the better devices, and then we'll sell the rest of them. And then we'll use those proceeds to buy something else. So it's a pretty good plan going forward. So we're asking for approval of the purchase order today.
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So when the devices go down or there's an issue, how are the repairs on these being handled?
Apple Care.
Apple Care?
Yeah.
So we don't do anything in-house?
No.
We send everything out, and what's the turnaround time from sending something out to get it back?
Yeah, Mr. Freeman can probably help me with this. 2 to 4 weeks typically will be fair. And what we do is we provide with collecting the old devices, we're going to have loaner stock to where we can give them a device so the teacher's not down until their device comes back, their repaired device comes back.
I know we've had some battery issues in the past.
This will help with that a lot. Most of the battery issues, we're getting a few additional batteries, but most of the battery issues are due to the age of the device. They just are simply wearing out.
And then how will that negatively impact the hand-me-down devices to TAs?
We will have spare devices or spare batteries that we're getting as part of this that will have stock that we can address some of those battery issues going forward. Yes, ma'am.
Not a lot of battery. It's just come from overcharging too, so that might need to be put out there in the atmosphere. You can't overcharge them or you can burn the battery out.
Absolutely.
So the total purchase order is $1,223,798. That's what I'm looking at.
It's on the quote, yes, ma'am.
Right, okay. So that's, I just need another for the motion.
Can I ask?
Yes, sir.
Being familiar with Apple products, this company that we getting these from, not trying to start a mess or anything, but this 13-inch unit price, $5,040, discounted to $1,000. That's just a lie. That device wouldn't cost $5,000 with what they're listing right here. So that just leads me to say, who is this company and how reputable are they if they were going to say that this 13-inch MacBook originally cost $5,040?
We buy directly from Apple.
This is Apple?
Yes.
Because I just went on Apple's site and that same device is like $1,200,
Mr. Doug, we'd have to do a comparison between the two. This is a discounted school level price.
Wow.
But yeah, we buy directly from Apple. We don't buy through a third party.
Seems like they tried to rob schools by raising prices and say they discount.
Has it been put out for a bid through through third-party companies?
No, when we you don't have to do that. It doesn't have to go through bid because the price that you would get from the other vendors would be the same as you would get from Apple. We approached that when we did the 612 lease devices for students, and we had Barrington Smith investigate that to see if you had to bid that because of it being an Apple product. And their advice back to us, the recommendation back to us was no, you didn't have to do sole source because Apple price can't be beat.
Ms. Ivory?
Yes.
I think the price of that 5,000 per, I think that's a 5-pack. So I think that is one that's a 5-pack price.
For 5 laptops.
So,
Cause I'm,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
That's what
about
I said,
they're about $1,000 a piece. The unit itself is about $1,000 a piece.
oh, okay, I see that last slide in the second.
Yeah, their
paragraph,
quotes,
5
Mr.
pack.
Bell, I'm sorry, their quotes are a little
A
bit
silver
complicated
5
because they
pack.
do it in packs, because that's how they ship it. But the device cost is about $1,000.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you,
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said.
thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I see it. I need some
Ms.
glasses.
Ivory? Oh, you would give your attention to him? Okay, Mr. Doug, you feel better about that now?
A whole lot better.
Yeah. I'm glad that was cleared up. I was wondering myself. Thank you. Communication is so important. Good communication is even better. So we need to get a motion. Does anyone else have any more questions before we proceed with a motion? I need to get a motion to purchase for the purchase order for staff device replacement totaling $1,223,700. $1,223,798.
I second. I mean, so moved.
Okay, it has been moved and second to approve the purchase order for staff device replacement totaling $1,223,798. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, has it. Purchase order is approved. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Altman, Finance Officer. Ms. Altman, while you're coming, we're not giving away any more money this day.
Good morning.
I think my item is technically on consent,
Consent.
but it's just an amendment for your approval this morning. And
Okay,
if
we've
you look
already
at
done
that,
it.
it is for local current expense funds, and it is moving the $650,000 from the local fund balance to support the purchase of the new teacher devices. Do you have any questions about that? That's the only thing I have.
So we need to approve this into consent.
Well, am I reading this right? I think it's because this is the first time this has been done this way. But so the way I'm looking at this, finance and academic services are both under consent agenda. So we just need to approve the consent agenda and it covers all those items.
Yes.
Is that how it's?
That's what I'm reading too.
Yeah. So
All right.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It has been moved and second that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Consent agenda is approved.
It's confusing when we have
It
it all.
is
in one
very-
day.
Yeah, we're going to do it one day.
All right, so I'm seeing that, Mr. Swain, you gonna come again? Am I looking at it wrong?
I think it's me.
I can stop.
Oh, right.
It actually is a break, but if you want to keep moving it, it's the superintendent's report.
Because we just approved it.
Yeah, but all of these were for a second read, Madam Chair. You just needed to approve those so that we're at
So
the
we've already approved, okay.
letter O, superintendent's report.
Dr. Miller, you may have the floor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Several items for you today. First is the monthly update, the COVID update that I'm prepared to share with you for the public. I will say that almost nightly, I provide the board with an update on where we are. So really, the monthly report is really no surprise because we're trying to keep a pulse as we go so the board can make informed decisions. So today's update is for December. And as always, I will share a little bit of data. First, the state of North Carolina, as you can see, a little tick up there. as we're aware, a new variant. We met with CC Papa, comes once a month and presents to cabinet. And Mr. Simmons said the other day when I was talking about the variant and viral load, and he looked at me and said,